is America. I'm Nathan Araya.
This is my line.
God is good.
As a first-generation Ethiopian American filmmaker, my passion for traveling and storytelling has led me to better understand the identity, culture, history of myself and others. Every city has a story. Every community has a voice. I'm going across the country to have unfiltered conversations on topics that affect the underrepresented communities across America.
The truth is, in any given year, 1 in 5 adults experience a mental illness.
Williams, who has struggled with depression since she was a teenager, says for years she never knew what she was suffering from.
Sometimes you feel like I'm the provider, I take care of people. I'm not supposed to be feeling this way. What do? I want it out.
We're predisposed to depression. Look at the history. I mean, it's that simple. Turn on the TV, that's PTSD right there. I don't care what color you are. But in our community, we don't talk about it.
We've got to get rid of that embarrassment. We've got to get rid of that stigma.
Especially with me being black, because we never had therapists in the black community.
And I don't think we're inclusive with the mental part as African Americans when we talk about health.
Today, I'm visiting a local barbershop in Austin, Texas to better understand the views of mental health from the minds of young game changers, artists, and professionals. We're starting to grow up, in a society where there's just so much more of depression and anxiety. At least it's more visible nowadays, right? Conversations like this is just so important because there's many people that are dealing with things. I think also one of my friends right now was just kind of just mentioned it to me. It was just like, man, how many times do you walk around and say, how are you doing to somebody? And they just say good. Like that typical generic answer. Yeah. And so many of us kind of deal with that, but we're not good. We don't take time to kind of open up about how we approach stress, anxiety, or mental health in our communities. How do y'all kind of deal with that in your own personal life, with where you're at with your career, life, education, in general?
I feel like the internet is both the best thing that's ever happened and the worst thing that's ever happened. Because on the one hand, you are able, if you feel alone or isolated, chances are there's at least one other person on the internet who is experiencing the same thing as you. But on the other hand, you're also seeing everybody's life, and everybody's life seems perfect, and they know what they're doing, and Forbes 30 under 30, and you're looking at yourself like I'm 28, so it's both. The internet has helped me kind of find my people, but it can also be kind of damaging. Right. So, because I live on the internet.
Hey YouTube world. Hey YouTube bro. Hey YouTube bro. It's me, Evelyn. So now it's cool to be from Wakanda. Some of y'all have been watching me here on the internets since I was in college. I didn't go to Oxford. I got this shirt at Goodwill.
And then also I was in the military, so that's a big part, mental health. We had to go through so many different psych evaluations, going overseas and coming back. And we had a lot of sergeants, and members I was in the military with, commit suicide because they came back and couldn't adjust, So talking about it, it really does help. Especially me, I transitioned from being in the military to being a barber. And it was tough, but I got to go in Afghanistan. I was in Afghanistan for 2 years, And after that, I was like, yeah, I'm done, So I tell other people that go through certain things, I've been through it in the military. I'm like, hey, man, it's all about talking, talking about it,
Even coming out of the military and then coming back to life, out here, how do you deal with that trauma? How do you?
It never go away.
What?
No, it's with you forever. You just gotta learn to deal with it. Just imagine, when you go to sleep, you have a bad nightmare, and you wake up and you have that feeling. Just imagine that every day. And that's what Afghanistan was.
It's kind of sad how like our generation, like where we at, we all gotta like figure it out, you know? Because I feel like the older generation was always so dismissive and it kind of passed by. It's like, I don't know about y'all, but like I've always saw somebody like, you know, they go that crazy man, that crackhead over there, and he's going crazy, you know, and we just so dismissive of it. Or, you know, your uncle, you know, he crazy as hell, you know, and it's just
I got a lot of crazy uncles.
Yeah, you know.
They just like isolate them.
Yeah, you know, you just push them out. We just be so dismissive of it. You
Wrap
know,
it up
even
in crazy. That's interesting. Even something like, I couldn't even imagine going home. Like, let's say I had a test or something I had to study for, or I wasn't doing well in school. I couldn't imagine going home saying to my dad, well, I have ADD, that's why I can't really focus in school. Can you imagine ADD? Like, can you imagine that? It's not happening.
There's such a negative connotation for around mental health, at least seeking for help.
To better understand the causes, symptoms, and solutions on mental health, I held an Instagram Live conversation and community discussion with psychiatric nurse Ladette Muleta to discuss the topics of anxiety, trauma, and substance abuse.
What are some ways that we can better normalize seeking help, you know, for proper mental health care within our culture, our community, and our society today?
What we're doing exactly, Nate, what you're doing today by, you know, having this candid conversation about mental health, about anxiety, about, you know, any type of psychological issues that a person may have needs to be discussed. And that's the way to remove stigma around it. With mental illness, currently in the US, 1 out of 5 people are affected. So there is no reason to have stigma around this illness and suffer in silence. And especially in our community, the stigma is huge and it needs to be reduced. And the way to reduce it is to involve regular people to have this conversation.
It's weird that you only see the extremes of stuff nowadays too. You know what I'm saying? You really see like, you either see somebody with the perfect family or you see Kanye. There's no way you know? Or Kanye. My man's going crazy, right? It's like, hey, you know,
I get you.
It's how do you even process that? Like, how do you even process like what's going on with you and your girl? You know what I'm saying? When you know, there's no real example of that. I mean, we try to find it through our shows and our TVs or whatever, but like, that's part of it. It plays into it. Just everybody seeing the perfect image and everybody just putting on this front all the time and just.
One time I told my friends back home in St. Louis that I was in Austin, Texas, and I was still thugging. And then later that day, I was eating fig spread on focaccia. Like that's the kind of life I'm living out here, all right?
You know, we always say like hashtag first world problems, hashtag this, hashtag that. And I think at the end of the day, you have to be able to say, hey, yeah, I have certain like privileges in life, but I'm still sad. Or like I'm still struggling with a certain issue in my life. So giving yourself that chance to feel everything also helps.
I think also just being able to have a safe space to feel whatever it is that you need to feel. And I think like in a lot of like homes, like growing up where it was very dismissed. Oh, ain't nothing wrong with you, girl, just go pray about it. And kind of replacing, you know, actually being able to discuss and talk about how you feel and find solutions for it. Not saying that God doesn't, you know, help us out, but that was something that was always just thrown off. Like, oh, you're crazy.
Right.
Or you need God, right? And it's kind of like, well, there's a balance in between there.
There is, especially with faith, and I've noticed that within the church because, you know, there's so many things that we just limit to just pray about it. Being educated on, you know, counseling, therapy, people that have done research and are, you know, have, you know, understand the human mind, you know, I mean, those things are important, right?
The number one thing we need to understand when it comes to therapy, I know our culture, in our culture especially, not just in, you know, in African cultures, even in African American cultures, we do not use therapy as a resource as much as we should. And yes, we need to, you know, educate ourselves on that. And the other part of it is that we need to understand that it's a service that is proven to work. There are ways to find cheaper resources, which is through the state. There are also organizations that provide uninsured people with places that they can go and get therapy for cheap. The only thing that I want to mention to people is that it is something that is worth investing, because we might feel like $120 for a session might be expensive, but we have to understand what we're getting out of it.
Right. What are y'all perceptions like growing up with like therapy, counseling, and those things? Like, what have you seen within your own communities of that viewpoint?
I never saw that growing up.
Y'all never saw it?
I never saw it.
I mean, just getting help in itself has this negative connotation around it, right? Like, you're gonna go to this group to help you out with this particular disorder. And then my first thought, just growing up is, I'm not like those people, right? Like, I'm me, I don't have that problem, because just where my mindset was growing up, that you shouldn't have to go seek out help.
And I think another thing is like, I don't know about y'all, but I grew up like through examples of other people ranking different challenges. So like those services were for people who like were going through schizophrenia, like we used to like rank something as not as bad or that's super bad. So like depression is at like the easier end, like just chill, you got this. But then there's someone dealing with like, they hear voices and like, oh yeah, Grego, you got, that uncle got to go for that. Exactly. And so it's like, no, all of it is valid and important, and they're all different. Like you can't compare them together.
My childhood is kind of where I figured out how I cope with things. The major incidents I could go to my parents, but for the most part, if I was feeling something, I couldn't talk about it. And because my parents were so strict, like I couldn't go hang out with a friend, I couldn't go do any of that stuff, so I started writing. So I would just sit there and I'd write everything that I felt. And eventually, those writings turned into poems, which turned into lyrics, which turned into song. And then as I got older and started making music, I started putting all those real feelings that I always had to, keep to myself into song. And when I was sharing that with people, I found that I wasn't alone.
Is anybody out there? Is anybody out there? Is anybody out there? Is anybody out there? Take a step back, relax, take a breath, think about it. Slow down. Take a step back, relax, take a breath, think about it, slow down.
There was this one time where a girl, my first project that I put out, she sent me a message saying, hey, I listened to your CD and it changed my mind. I was going to commit suicide. And it made me realize not only am I not alone, I'm helping other people not feel alone.
And I said, love it.
I think for me, I don't know if you guys had immigrant parents, but for me, I had an immigrant parent. So like my mom was a single mom raising 3 boys on her own. So my dad left when I was 10 years old. And the things that I would deal with, through school, whatever, and dealing with issues, she didn't understand because she grew up in Africa. And the problems were just different, in her own communities. So it was almost as I was growing in America, she was growing with me. And having like your parent as your hero, it's very tough for you to see them vulnerable. So like my mom, very rarely will I see her, really like give in to like a lot of pressure. She only showed me her strong side. It's only now, when we're talking about like as she got older, that now that I'm older, I'm getting reintroduced to who she is as a woman. And she's saying all this stuff to me about how she made it. Go to work, coming home, dropping groceries off, make sure we did our homework, cooking, feed us, give us a shower, and she would eat maybe late at night if she got a chance to eat, So part of it is your parents sometimes are just growing with you. It's like they're superheroes in our eyes, but you don't get a chance to really see them at their most vulnerable moments,